The closer you get to retirement, the more important it is to really zero in on the various sources of income that you will have in retirement. And for federal employees, that means getting a solid estimate of your expected FERS pension income. If you're doing some preliminary pension estimates on your own, or if you're making updates to a pension estimate that you received from your agency, it's important to recognize the factors that could cause you to potentially underestimate or overestimate your pension income, because both scenarios have unique challenges and consequences. So in this video, I'm going to discuss 6 factors that could cause you to misjudge or miscalculate your FERS pension. But before we dive into those factors, welcome to the Money Briefing. My name is Jarrell Harvey, and I'm with Fedway Financial. On this channel, we cover topics related to personal finance, federal benefits, and retirement planning. So if you found this video helpful, please consider sharing and subscribing. Most people can get an estimate of their FERS pension in a few simple steps. But just because the calculation is relatively simple, it does not mean that the calculation is totally straightforward. Just as a refresher, the FERS pension calculation is based on 3 components. It's your high 3 average salary times your length of service times a pension multiplier. Within those 3 components, nearly every federal employee has different variables, and it's those differences that cause a simple calculation to not always be simply straightforward. One factor that I often see missing from pension calculations is credible months of service. If you watch a video on YouTube or attend a retirement workshop, 9 times out of 10, the length of credible service is a whole number. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, federal employees do not retire with exactly 20 years, 30 years, or any other whole number. Instead, most federal employees typically retire with some credible months of service, such as 22 years and 6 months, or 33 years and 10 months. However, it's not always intuitive and straightforward to include those months of service in your pension calculation because it's rarely shown in most examples. But if you are projected to have some extra months of service when you retire, you want to make sure that you capture that time, and you can do so by dividing your number of months by 12 and adding it to your last full year of service. So as an example, the person who plans to retire with 22 years and 6 months, the LOS for their pension calculation should be 22.5. And the person who chooses to retire at 33 years and 10 months, their LOS should be 33.83 for calculation purposes. In addition to missing credible months, many federal employees also ignore unused sick leave in their pension calculation. Many viewers know when you retire, your accumulated unused sick leave hours are converted to credible service time, which can potentially increase the dollar value of your monthly pension check. I have a video that fully explains how to calculate unused sick leave for FERS pension credit, so I won't go through all the details in this video, but I encourage you to watch that video for a complete explanation. I do want to point out, once you identify your accrued sick leave hours, the easiest way to convert those hours to actual time is by using a sick leave conversion chart. I've included a link to a conversion chart in the description of this video. It's also important to note that the conversion chart does not list every number. If you don't see your exact hours, round up to the next highest number to determine the months and days that those hours equate to. Since pensions are based on years and full months, any total service that does not equal to a full month should be excluded from your pension calculation. So when it comes to the length of service, as I've mentioned, you should consider your credible months and you should include your unused sick leave. The third factor that you also want to consider is your service computation date, or SCD. There are different types of SCDs, which can make things a little confusing, but many times the various SCDs are the same date. Your retirement SCD is used to determine your retirement eligibility. Unfortunately, your retirement SCD is not always readily available, so many people will just use their leave SCD as a proxy because you can easily get that date by looking at a recent leave and earnings statement. If there are discrepancies with your service computation date, it usually occurs when there are periods of temporary, seasonal, or part-time employment. It can also occur when there are periods of extended leave without pay or discrepancies can pop up due to bought back military time. If any of these situations apply to you, you definitely want to be mindful to check and confirm that you and your agency are using the appropriate service computation dates. Now, the first three factors that we've discussed will mostly affect your length of service in the pension calculation. But the fourth vital factor is to identify or estimate an appropriate high 3 average salary. In some ways, this is the most difficult component to pin down, especially if your retirement date is 3 or more years away, because nobody knows exactly what annual pay raises will be from year to year. There's also the opportunity for step increases and other promotions, which may all impact your high 3. Typically, your high 3 average salary will be your last 78 pay periods, but it's important to remember that your high 3 can be any consecutive 3-year period, and it's also very likely that your high 3 won't align perfectly to a calendar year that goes from January to December. Additionally, if you're trying to forecast what your high 3 may be in the future, then you should make sure that your salary adjustments fall within certain ranges. Over the last 2 years, the average annual pay raises have been over 4% and 5%, which are relatively high based on historical averages. Recency bias may cause some individuals to use elevated adjustments for future projections, but historically over the last 35 years, pay raises have averaged about 2.8%. So using an annual adjustment between 2.5% to 3% may provide a better long-term estimate. For the fifth factor, I really want to lock in on the pension multiplier because applying in a wrong multiplier can make a significant difference in your pension amount. The pension multiplier for many federal employees will be 1%, but there are a few different subgroups of FERS employees that may have a different multiplier applied to a portion of their pension or all of their pension. The first subgroup is those who retire at age 62 and older with at least 20 years of service. Their multiplier will be a flat 1.1%. The second subgroup are special provision employees and congressional employees. They will have a 1.7% multiplier applied to their first 20 years of service and 1% applied to any service exceeding 20 years. The last subgroup is a relatively small group of employees who transfer to FERS after having at least 5 years of CSRS service. The pension calculation for these individuals will have components of both FERS and CSRS. The last factor is technically not part of the pension calculation, but it often catches many federal employees by surprise. The pension calculation that we've discussed yields a gross pension amount. The net amount that actually gets deposited into your bank account will be lower than the number that you calculate due to deductions for taxes, spousal benefits, and insurance premiums. So you will want to take those things into account when considering how much money will be available to use in retirement. As I mentioned earlier, plugging in general numbers to get a pension estimate is pretty simple, but understanding how the 6 factors that we've covered in this video apply to your personal situation is not always straightforward. If you received any value from this video, please click the like button. You can also subscribe to our channel to get more content like this. If you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Fedway Financial get the most out of their money and federal benefits, be sure to visit us at www.fedwayfinancial.com, or you can schedule a consultation with us by clicking on the media link in the video description. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next Money Briefing.